The morning my daughter inherited $33 million, she didn't hug me. She didn't even smile. She looked at me across her brand new marble kitchen island, her hands resting on a glass of champagne, and said words that split my heart in two. "Mom, you don't belong in this life anymore." She didn't shout. She didn't weep. She said it like she was asking me to take my shoes off at the door. Casual, polite, final. I left that house with 2 suitcases and a heart heavier than either of them. And 3 days later, the same daughter who had cast me out came pounding on the door of a motel room, her mascara streaked, her voice cracked, begging for help she never thought she would need. If you've ever been told you were disposable, if you've ever felt your own child's love replaced by pride and money, then this story is yours too. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Your voice matters. Let me tell you what happened. My name is Eleanor, and for most of my life, I thought being a mother meant never putting yourself first. When Claire was little, I worked double shifts so she could have ballet shoes instead of hand-me-downs. I sold my wedding ring to cover her first semester of college. I told her not to quit when her father died, even though I had nothing left but the roof over our heads. Every time she cried in frustration, I dried her tears. Every time she doubted herself, I reminded her she was brilliant. When the world told her no, I told her yes, and then went without so she could have what she needed. And when her daughter, my granddaughter Lily, was born, I stepped right back into sleepless nights and dirty bottles. I rocked Lily while Claire built her career. I never once complained. I thought that was my place, to love, to give, to support. I thought all those sacrifices were bricks in the foundation of her success. But sometimes, the very foundation you build is the same one they stand on to look down at you. The money came on a Thursday. By Friday, my daughter's house didn't even look like hers anymore. Delivery trucks clogged the driveway. Men in uniforms carried in rugs so thick they could swallow a child's footsteps. Chandeliers boxed in crates taller than I was. Cases of wine with labels I couldn't even pronounce. I stood in the kitchen, like I always did, waiting for the kettle to boil, when Claire swept in. Her phone was pressed to her ear, her laugh sharp and unfamiliar. "Yes, Tuscany in the spring," she said breezily. "Private villa, staff, the works. 33 million changes everything, doesn't it?" Her eyes flicked over me without really seeing me. I may as well have been one of the old chairs waiting to be hauled out. When she ended the call, she set the phone down and exhaled like she'd been holding in her new self, ready to unveil it. "Mom," she said, her voice clipped, her eyes hard, "you don't belong in this life anymore." At first I thought I misheard. I blinked, clutching the dish towel in my hand. "What life?" "This one." She waved at the marble counters, the sparkling fixtures, the unopened boxes stacked like monuments to her new fortune. "I can't have your needy energy here. It doesn't fit." Her words didn't come with anger. They came with dismissal. That was worse. Anger at least has fire. Dismissal is ice. My granddaughter Lily ran into the room, her curls bouncing, holding a book. "Grandma, will you read to me tonight?" But Claire pulled her close, fingers tightening around her small arm. "Not tonight, sweetheart. Grandma's leaving." Leaving? Just like that, decades of sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar stretched, every ounce of love poured out, it all shrank down to one cold word. I looked at the casserole dish I'd just set on the counter, steam curling up from the cornbread. I folded the napkin in my lap. My hands shook, so I pressed the creases flat to steady them. I wanted to remind her of the tuition checks, of the nights in the garage, of the child I raised when she was too tired to lift her head. I wanted to scream that I had built this life with my own hands. But I didn't. I rose, quietly. I walked upstairs, packed 2 suitcases, one with clothes, one with photographs, and carried them down the staircase I had climbed 1,000 times. When I reached the front porch, the automatic light clicked on, spilling its glow over me like a spotlight I hadn't asked for. The taxi pulled up. I slid inside. No goodbye, no wave from the window. Just silence as the house and everything I had poured myself into shrank smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. Her words echoed louder than the engine, louder than the city, louder than my own heartbeat. You don't belong in this life anymore. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if she was right.
On the third night, I reached for the shoebox I'd hidden beneath the lining of my suitcase. A shoebox I'd carried through every move, every storm, every goodbye. Inside were scraps of a life, my mother's brooch, the pawn ticket from the ring I sold to pay tuition, a bundle of letters tied with string. One envelope slipped loose. My breath caught when I saw the handwriting, my late husband's, faint but familiar. On the front, in his careful script, "For Eleanor, if the time ever comes." My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a letter, and behind it, documents I had never seen. The words blurred through my tears at first, but when they came into focus, my heart pounded. The letter explained that part of the estate, those $33 million Claire now flaunted, was tied to a foundation, and he had made me co-trustee, not as a courtesy, but with full authority. 2 signatures required for major transfers, oversight power, the ability to pause accounts if funds were misused. I pressed the paper flat on the flimsy nightstand. The motel hum faded. The ache in my chest eased into something sharper, steadier. For 3 days I had been invisible, disposable, forgotten. But here, in my hands, was proof I wasn't powerless. I was the safeguard. I wiped my cheeks and whispered into the stale motel air, "Thank you, Robert." And for the first time since Claire's words cut me out of her world, I didn't feel discarded. I felt ready. The next morning, I put on the blouse with pearl buttons, the one I always saved for job interviews, funerals, and days when I needed to remember I was more than invisible. I tucked the envelope into my purse and took the bus downtown. The law office was quiet, the kind of place where carpets muffled your footsteps and even the air smelled like seriousness. I handed the letter to the receptionist. She glanced down, then up at me, her eyes shifting as though she'd just been handed a piece of dynamite wrapped in stationery. She said, "Please wait here." Minutes later, I was ushered into an office lined with books that looked older than me. Across the desk sat Mr. Larkin, a lawyer with silver hair and a gaze that could see right through pretense. He read the documents slowly, page by page, then folded his hands. "Mrs. Bennet, your husband left you more than memories. He left you authority. You are co-trustee. That means nothing of significance can move without your approval." The words hit me like thunder. For days I had been sleeping in a room that smelled of mildew and loneliness, convinced I was disposable. Now here I was, holding the key to $33 million. I swallowed hard. "So when she spends recklessly?" He nodded. "You can stop it. In fact, you're obligated to. The foundation wasn't built for mansions and luxury cars. It was built for service. Right now, she's already in breach. The word echoed. Breach. Not just betrayal of me, betrayal of her father's legacy. Mr. Larkin slid a folder across the desk. Inside were ledgers, transfer requests, checks half-written for marble counters and imported wine. The sums staggered me. Numbers I couldn't imagine spending in a lifetime, burned in days. "You can choose to look the other way," he said gently, "or you can act." I closed the folder, my hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. I'll act. Over the next days, I learned more about foundations and accounts than I ever thought I'd need to know. Every time my hand trembled at a form, I remembered my daughter's words. "You don't belong in this life anymore." And I signed with calm precision. Freeze notice. Dual authorization order. Account flagged for misuse. Each page became another brick under my feet, lifting me out of that motel darkness. And with every stroke of the pen, I whispered the same phrase to myself, a promise my husband once made in his own quiet way. This is not revenge. This is stewardship. It started quietly. On Saturday morning, I sat in the motel lobby with a paper cup of weak coffee when my phone buzzed with a short message from Mr. Larkin. Funds frozen. 3 syllables. That was all. But in those 3 words, the ground shifted. By noon, Claire was calling. Her name lit up my screen again and again. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice spilled through, sharp with panic. "Mom, there's something wrong with the accounts. My card isn't working. The contractor's check bounced. Call me back. Now, this is urgent." I didn't. On Sunday, there were 3 more messages, her tone climbing from irritation to fear. "Mom, do you hear me? The landscaper just walked off. They're threatening to sue. Why is this happening? I need answers." I sat on the edge of the bed, listening. I could picture her pacing that marble kitchen, tugging at her hair, snapping at Lily's nanny, glaring at bills she thought she'd never see again. By Monday, her mask had shattered completely. "Do you know what you've done? The bank says every transfer is blocked. My friends are waiting on deposits for our trip. Do you understand how humiliating this is? I can't breathe, Mom. I can't breathe." The sound of her voice cracking should have broken me. Instead, it steadied me. For 3 days, she had flaunted that fortune like armor, tossing me aside as though $33 million could erase the woman who raised her. Now, in less than 72 hours, the very wealth she worshipped was choking her. That evening, I heard pounding on the motel door. Hard, frantic, like fists begging instead of knocking. When I opened it, there she stood, hair tangled, mascara streaked down her cheeks, shoulders shaking with rage and fear. The silk scarves and champagne confidence were gone. She looked less like an heiress and more like a child caught in a storm she didn't understand.
Her voice broke as she gasped. "Mom, you have to fix this. They're freezing everything. The builders walked off. My cards are dead. Everyone's turning on me. Please, please, you have to sign." The word please hung in the air, a word I hadn't heard from her in years. For a moment, I just looked at her. The daughter who once clutched my hand in ballet slippers, now clutching her pride like a drowning woman grabs driftwood. "Sit down, Claire,"
I said softly, stepping aside to the small motel table. It's time you and I had a talk about responsibility. The emergency meeting was called for Wednesday morning, not in Claire's marble kitchen, not in her half-finished mansion, but in a glass-walled boardroom downtown, where the air itself felt heavy with judgment. When I walked in, donors and board members were already seated around the long oak table. Men in dark suits, women in pearls, accountants with thick binders, lawyers with glowing screens. Every face turned when I entered, but not with pity, with expectation. The last chair scraped back as Claire swept in. Late, of course. She hid behind oversized sunglasses, her hair tied in a careless knot, scarf tossed over one shoulder like armor, but her hands shook as she dropped her phone on the table. "Let's begin," Mr. Larkin said, adjusting his glasses. "As you know, certain disbursements have been paused pending review by the co-trustee." The murmur started immediately. Claire ripped off her sunglasses, her eyes red-rimmed. "This is ridiculous. I inherited this money. It's mine. Nobody, not her, not you, has the right to tell me how to use it." I folded my hands in front of me. My voice was steady. "It isn't yours, Claire. It's the foundation's. You were trusted with it. That's not the same thing." Her face went scarlet. "You're jealous. You've always been jealous of me. You hate that I finally have something bigger than you ever did." A donor cleared his throat. A man in a navy suit, the kind of man who had written million-dollar checks before breakfast. "Your father didn't build this legacy for marble countertops and luxury cars. He built it for the community. We're here because we believe in that vision, not in your lifestyle." The words cut deeper than mine ever could. Claire flinched, her lip trembling. But her anger flared hotter to mask it. Mr. Larkin tapped his laptop, the screen filled with numbers, transfer logs, rejected transactions, 6-figure deposits for cars, $500,000 for renovations, luxury travel packages, all marked, blocked, dual signature required. The silence was suffocating. He continued, "Board members, the foundation documents are clear. 2 signatures are required for all significant disbursements. Mrs. Bennett has acted within her authority." Claire slammed her palms on the table. "This is not happening to me. I am the heir. This is my future." "No," I said quietly, "this was your father's legacy. And right now, you're trampling it." Her chair screeched as she half rose, her voice cracking. "You're humiliating me." "No," I replied evenly. "You've done that yourself." The room fell into stillness, and in that silence, I reached into my bag and slid a folder on the table. 2 neat pages, side by side. "Here are your options." Her fingers hesitated before snatching the papers. She scanned them, her breath quickening. "This is absurd. I'm not a child. I don't need a babysitter for my money. This foundation is mine. My name is on it. My father left it to me." Her voice cracked on that last word, me, and in the crack I heard fear. The donors shifted in their seats. A woman in a navy blazer spoke calmly, like a teacher correcting a spoiled student. "Your father left you stewardship, not a blank check. There's a difference." Her head snapped toward me, her eyes blazing. "You did this. You've been planning this since the beginning. You couldn't stand that I finally had more than you ever did." I didn't flinch. I met her gaze, steady and unblinking. "Claire, I don't want your money. I want your integrity. And right now, that's worth less than your overdrafted account." The words landed like a slap. She recoiled, lips trembling, then shoved the folder back across the table so hard it skidded in front of me. "I will not be controlled by you, not by anyone." Her voice cracked. This time she didn't recover. She looked around the room for rescue, for a nod, a kind smile, even a glance of sympathy. But no one met her eyes. The donors' faces were stone. The lawyers scribbled notes without pause. Even the accountant, the one she used to charm with flattery, stared down at his papers in silence. She was alone. Utterly, terrifyingly alone. Finally, she shoved her chair back. The screech of wood against tile was louder than her words. "This isn't over. You'll all regret humiliating me like this." And then she was gone, her heels clacking against the marble floor, her scarf trailing like a flag of surrender. The door slammed, the echo rattling the glass walls. The room exhaled. For a moment, no one moved. I gathered the folder, slid it into my bag, and spoke into the silence. "The choice has been made." A silver-haired donor across the table nodded slowly. "Well done, Mrs. Bennett." And for the first time since my daughter's words had cut me down, I felt steady again. The hours after that meeting were eerily still, like the silence after a storm when you're waiting to see what trees have been uprooted.
By evening, the storm found me. My phone lit up with messages, one after another, her voice spilling into my voicemail like broken glass. "You humiliated me in front of them. You're jealous, that's all this is. I'll drag you through court. I'll ruin you before you ruin me." Each message sharper, faster, until they blurred into one long scream. I saved every single one, not to use against her, but to remind myself later of how far she had fallen. By the weekend, the threats had grown teeth. Letters from lawyers arrived, written in the language of intimidation, phrases like interference of inheritance and undue influence. But behind all their words was an emptiness they couldn't hide. Every time her side threw fire, ours answered with calm water. The trustee acted within authority. Section 4B requires dual signatures. All actions documented and compliant with fiduciary duty. No arguments, no emotion, just paper. And paper, in the end, is heavier than fury. By Monday night, the pounding came again, hard, frantic, fists against wood that made the door shudder in its frame. When I opened it, she stood there, hair tangled, mascara streaked, her voice raw from crying. No silk, no jewels, just desperation. Her breath came in gasps. "Mom, please, please, I can't breathe. I need you. I need you to fix this." The word please broke something in me. She hadn't said it in years. I stepped aside, gesturing to the small motel table. "Sit down, Claire," I said quietly. "It's time we talked about what it really means to belong." She sat at the motel table, the same rickety table I'd used as a desk these last few weeks, her fingers shredding a tissue into thin strips. For a long time, she couldn't look at me. Her shoulders trembled with every breath, as if holding herself upright took more strength than she had left. Finally, she whispered, "I thought the money would fix everything. I thought it meant freedom, that I'd never have to feel small again." Her voice broke, and for a moment she was my little girl again, knees scraped, sobbing because the world had been unkind. But this time, the bruise wasn't on her skin. It was in her soul. I poured 2 cups of motel coffee, bitter and thin, and slid one across the table. She stared at it, then at me, her eyes red and swollen. "You're right," she said hoarsely. "I pushed you out because I didn't want you to remind me where I came from. I wanted to believe I was above it, above you. But without you, I'm nothing. I don't know who I am anymore." I let the silence hang for a moment, then said softly, "You're still my daughter. That hasn't changed. But money doesn't erase who you are, Claire. It magnifies it. And what it's shown me is a woman drowning in pride."
Her tears spilled over then. She pressed both hands to her face, shaking. Between sobs, her words cracked out. I lost everyone. My friends, my dignity. Even Lily looks at me differently, and I did it to myself. I reached across the table, covering her trembling hands with mine. For the first time in weeks, she didn't pull away. She clung to me, desperate, as if I was the last solid thing left in her collapsing world. I don't deserve your help, she whispered. You don't, I said gently, but love doesn't keep score. I'll help you anyway. Her sobs quieted into shaky breaths. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were softer, weary, human. We didn't fix everything that night. We didn't untangle decades of wounds in a single conversation. But for the first time since $33 million crashed into our lives, I saw the possibility of healing. When she left, she didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for signatures or accounts. She just hugged me, tight, desperate, real. And in that embrace, I felt something return. Not trust, not yet, but the fragile beginning of forgiveness. Months passed, and the noise of lawsuits, scandals, and gossip finally faded. The mansion sat half-built, a skeleton of concrete and rebar, an unfinished monument to pride. The luxury cars never arrived. The so-called friends who had toasted Claire with champagne disappeared the moment the check stopped. But in that silence, something else began to grow. At the next board meeting, Claire didn't storm in late with sunglasses and silk. She came early, hair tied back, notebook in hand. Her voice when she spoke was quieter than it used to be, but steadier. She said, I've been thinking. I said, her eyes down at her notes, we should use part of the funds for caregivers, for women who take care of family but are invisible, unsupported. People like, she hesitated, then lifted her eyes to me, people like my mother. The room fell still. For once there were no murmurs, no side glances, just silence, heavy with the weight of her words. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The board approved it unanimously. And so, the Caregiver Grant Program was born. Small checks, maybe a few $100s each, sent to women over 55 who had given their lives to caring for others. Women, like me, who had once felt invisible. I attended the first ceremony quietly, sitting in the back row. One by one, women came forward to accept their envelopes. Nurses, grandmothers, neighbors who had sacrificed careers and comforts for love. Some cried. Some stood taller than I ever seen them stand before. Claire was at the podium. No silk scarf, no champagne laughter, just a steady voice. She told the room, this isn't my money, it's a legacy, and legacies should lift people, not bury them. When she stepped down, she handed me an envelope. My heart skipped, but inside was no check, just a letter, written in her handwriting. Thank you for not abandoning me when I abandoned you. That night, as I placed the letter beside the one her father had left me, I whispered into the quiet, Robert, we did it. And then I turned to you, the one listening, the one who knows what it feels like to be cast aside and rise again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.